Welcome back to the stream, my friend. How are you?
It's a pleasure to be back. I'm doing well. It's been a bit of a befuddling last few days, couple weeks. But yeah, things are good, man. Things are really
So,
good.
befuddling is an interesting word choice. Does that have anything to do with a certain final experiment in Antarctica at all?
I would say yeah, it's a very compelling observation. Um, and I think observation. I mean they some of them on that side like globe side we'll talk about. Like the final experiment is just a name and everything. So like I'm cool with leaving it at that because I do think it's an observation. And I guess if just to go right into it, the as far as it had sounded like it was when they went to Antarctica, they were going to be observing something that could only be explained by one model and not the other, whether it stayed up in the air or that it set, and if it set, it was a flat Earth, or AE confirming, and if it stayed in the air, it was for a globe explained, predicted. And so they went and saw the sun as they reported, and I know there's some talk and stuff, but for just what's reported, and so to me, because I'm trying to be as empirical as possible and as objective as possible. The going into it, the thought was the flat Earth cannot explain that sun, and then a sun was reported. So empirically, this would mean that the model that can accommodate that actually predicts would be empirically in the lead because that's an observation that is in nature, it's in our shared reality, and so it has to be explained.
And you're worrying me because you're saying everything right that I agree with, and that's worrying me because I feel like there's a big but coming. I feel like you're about to drop some but here.
It's so I'm completely fine with the observation and what's made, and then adapting my worldview. And I had for a week and a half, I was very into naturalism, trying to kind of being on the creation side for a while as I'm trying to learn the discussions and the contentions and the topics for the opposed opposition. I've kind of had an upbringing and everything, but with it, and I know a little bit of the worldview. It just things seem very strange, and but it is what it is. Like if the observations can't be explained.
I'm curious. I need to ask a few clarifying questions. When you said that you sort of got into naturalism for like a week, is this like post final experiment? You started like looking more into a more naturalistic model to learn more about it. Is that what I'm hearing here?
So yeah, it would be when the observation was reported. I said, okay, that will swing me to the globe, and I was on the globe side. I mean, it's barely. I would say like it's that observation puts it to a globe. However, I still feel there's a lot of explainability. Like other natural phenomena can be explained, I think, by both models. It's just not readily apparent what a flat Earth could say for that sun, but that's important because you have to accommodate new information to a worldview, and then be able to onboard it successfully without conflicting explanations or anything for other phenomena, or you have to discard the model. And so
I gotta say, like, I'm totally agreeing with this approach that you're coming with. I mean, you're looking at the two models, weighing the pros and cons, which one matches and explains and predicts reality better. And yeah, I mean, I gotta say, Nathan, I was a little bit worried after our last conversation where you did say that a positive observation of a 24-hour sun circling over your head in Antarctica would potentially change your mind. And you had also been saying some things that worried me because you had said, I think almost verbatim, right? You'd said, like, if the world's not flat, then God doesn't exist or something. And, like, that was worrying me because that's a whole lot of, existential weight. Like, basically, your entire concept of is wrapped up in this idea that, like, I don't know. Like, I was a little bit worried about if once that observation happened, if, like, your worldview was just going to crack and shatter, you're going to be depressed or something. Like, I was a little bit worried about you, dude. So,
yeah, no. Well, thank you.
After that, all right. Like, I'm happy to see that you started learning more about the other model and stuff. Was that difficult to you? And, like, have you reconciled the fact that you can still have your religious beliefs and spiritual beliefs and a globe model? Have you been able to reconcile that? How has that been?
Yeah. So, it's very, I guess, it is a lot. It's because spirituality either it is or isn't a thing, right? And so, I don't think you could be half or on a spectrum of spirit is real or not. And so to have that in your worldview, and what my thought was if the Earth is a globe, because I've discussed the flat Earth, obviously, and I advocate it as something that validates the Bible substantially. And it's my opinion that the Bible is a flat Earth book. And so I'm going to take the side that if the Earth is flat, that's better for the Bible than if the Earth is a globe. I'm going to have to concede that means the Bible is not infallible. And I do think that the Bible should be able to explain phenomena. If it's inspired by the Holy Spirit, they could write the Earth was a globe, and then that could have been divine revelation later. And so I think those things could have been done, but I think a God worthy of worship would be able to give us something that's accurate and holds through time and is unchanging. And that's big to me, is a God worthy of worship. Would I prefer a creator? I would prefer, but I think if the Earth is a globe, a personal creator who gave us some form of contact is not possible. I think because abiogenesis is so miraculous and certain other things and like space-time and all the dark things, I think that the globe or universe, Big Bang expansion, heliocentric model, whatever you want to call it, the globe, would be, I think a creator could be the initial mover, but then just set nature or on its course, gave it laws, put the energy and everything there, and then just said go. So that was where I was at, and I think it's very important because and this is I'll try to pick my words lightly here and everything, but there is part of the flat Earth is that there's a conspiracy. Some people somewhere in the line are not telling the truth, and how much conspiracies there are, how many, how deep they go or whatever is one thing, but there are some that are very real and pose an immediate threat. When you learn that there are admitted release documents that Operation Northwoods, in peacetime, our own people in the MIC military complex are trying to have an event for the purpose to go to war, which means everyone who fights then in that conflict would be fighting for a lie. And if they're willing to propose it once, who knows, they're allowed to sea spray, which is release bacteria on people, do research, as long as it's for research purposes, a bad use of science.
Hold on.
So I think however the worldview is, whatever the world is, how we go about dealing with people who are willing to harm others for any reason, it's how you approach that conversation, I think, is very lenient on which cosmology we're talking about.
So, okay, there's a bit to unpack here because, I'm not a big fan of the government or the military-industrial complex or all these.
There are good people who serve. I think we all know good people who mean well, who want to protect. That's very noble, very different people from other mindsets.
And I'm happy to acknowledge the fact that the government is lying to us about some stuff, but I think it's a bridge too far to think the government could be lying about something this is just so difficult to cover up, something this massive. But I want to ask you, you had said that after the final experiment, you started looking into a more and considering a naturalistic model and weighing how plausible you consider that to be. And you said that you were thinking there were some strange things that you felt still didn't work with this naturalistic model. That I'm curious, is this one of those things, like these unclassified, these declassified government missions, these Operation Northrop, is this part of what's the? It sounds like you've transitioned to, and correct me if I'm wrong here. It sounds like you are kind of, you would have previously been on the flat Earth camp, and now it kind of sounds like you're almost on the fence, leaning towards the globe. Is that an accurate depiction of where you're at right now?
Yeah. So pretty much upon the reporting of the 24-hour sun and my knowledge at the time. And I'll mention the name Joe Hanvey. I don't know if you've heard of him or anything, but I wasn't aware of him until after the reporting, or at least when I looked into him. I might have heard the name or something, but when it was reported that there was a 24-hour sun, it's okay. That implies a globe because an AE model cannot explain that. And so I was, even however slightly, I would if asked, yes, the Earth is a globe, because that's the worldview that can explain. You can chalk it up to mystery of the heavens or hyperdimensional shapes of the sky. That stuff it's one thing to claim a mystery for the flat Earth side, but then it has to be at least compelling that what we claim is a mystery is understood through spherical coordinates. And I mean, you could say too, there's something about how circles and hemispheres are essentially identical in their mapping and positioning, and we always see in a hemisphere. So maybe there's circular coordinate systems and things that can be used to map the stars in the sky and everything. But I thought that sun it has to be in certain points. It has to be overhead here, 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 and here, and travel at a certain rate. And so I thought that observation is, until a demonstration occurs, that would make that's a globe. I have no problem saying that's a globe observation or globe evidence, because I would want the same, mutual respect. If we're able to go out and show water appears very, very flat level, in terms of level, we're saying flat level or like construction level. We're talking, I would, hopefully globers a globe person would be able to say, yep, that is fairly flat, and that is something given the curvature and everything. And then we can talk about optics and everything. But I think you have to have agreement and say, yeah, this is what we're looking at. This is what it would correspond to. And to me, that's science. And I'm big on faith and everything, but science has to set things up. And then if a faith is willing to be scrutinized, examined, and strengthened, you should look at empirical data and embrace it. And actually, if you say you are trying to show that the Bible is false, and you do that, you show, okay, whatever observation or experience in my life happened, now I think the Bible is false, and maybe you're a person of previous faith, you're actually still, in a way, and you're kind of like leaving remembrance of the Bible, of your faith, you're being biblical, because the Bible says to prove all things. So if you try to prove something to yourself and it points opposite, that's fair, that's valid, that's biblical. And I think that's what an honest creator would want us to, does God really exist? And well, where's your faith? And but I do think, like, as far as people will say evidence of God and things like that, my position on that is I can never have evidence of God directly, any evidence or something like I think it would like burn my eyes or something. But like, I think that God has to be taken on faith, because how can you claim to love God, whatever your belief system is? How can you claim to love God who you can't see if you can't show that love to your fellow man who you can see? I think that having faith is very important. Yeah. Plus, it gives hope and optimism and looking for good outcomes in things where maybe the situation might be bleak. So I think there are certain benefits to it. But if the evidence points one way, that's where I think you got to go first.
This is why I like you, Nathan, because I think you're like an open, honest individual. I don't think that you're just trying to score rhetorical points on the internet. I think you're generally trying to come at this, trying to figure out what's true. And like, I really appreciate your approach where like we seem to agree that the ultimate arbiter of what's true, at least, independent of faith, is testing it against reality. And that's the kind of the only gauge that we have to go off of is, well, what happens in reality when we test it? At least, the only physical thing that we have to go off of that doesn't.
Yeah, it's a shared existence, and it's quantifiable. We can measure things, as long as you have the engineering.
I'm curious, okay, like, because you've kind of been dancing around it. You've been saying, oh, you're leaning towards the globe camp and this and that. So I got to ask you just point blank, are you no longer a flat earther?
So right now, I would say if I had to, I am back to a flat earth. This has been somewhat recent in the last day or two, trying to hash things out here. And so here's why I'm going to say this. And I'm still, that's where I stand ultimately to answer your question. So here, with the 24-hour observation, my knowledge was there's no way for a flat earth model to explain that. And it's predicted by the globe. That's globe. So that's where I went. And then I had heard about Joe Hanvey, who is working on a model which I think is actually, as far as science goes, and as far as actually using the premise of a biblical foundation and framework, he is trying to put together a model of a flat earth. It's got a flat earth map, a dome. He has like a two-way mirror to kind of simulate superfluid and then lights. And he's still working on it. It's kind of like an improving model. He's not quite there yet, but he's getting better and better with it. It's a model, and he was able to actually, going off of like the biblical mentionings of like a crystalline firmament and structure molten glass, he showed an apparent 24-hour sun reflection in the firmament in the dome, which to me is scientifically, you're taking an observation, you're setting up an experiment to try to recreate using conditions you think were there, and try to recreate that observation in a controlled setting. And he did that. He showed a 24-hour sun, however crude or whatever any critiques want to say. Actually, I might want to note something on that. But he did show a 24-hour sun, which if you would plot like on that on that flat model, if you plotted them in Antarctica, where that reflection was going would create that circle. And so to me, that is a scientific demonstration and empirical substantiation that the model can, however it works, however precisely, the model can, even crudely, if you want to call it that, because he's gotten a few insults, but if you're going to still call it crude, he's still got an apparent observation, which would be what was observed, which is the 24-hour sun. And
Nathan,
actually,
Nathan, I'm surprised, I got to say, because the way that you even just set this up, you couched it with so many disclaimers to start with, as in, oh, it's a model that he's still working on, it's in progress, it's not refined, it's like it's getting towards reproducing the results. And then as you transition to describing it, then you started basically taking it for granted that his results are able to replicate the observation. And like, it was almost like you had a leap from he's trying to make a model that will one day explain these results, and then all of a sudden it was like you were describing this guy's model that does explain the results, and it was enough for you to switch back to a flat Earth, even though you at the start that his model wasn't complete and couldn't. It was like a half-formed model, and you described it like, you know, I'm not super familiar with the details here. I would look it up. Yeah.
I'm just gonna. That's my roommate's dog.
Yeah, no worries. I love dogs. But yeah, like
I think it's mail time.
So yeah, this is the thing. It's like this half-formed model, which, you know, maybe there's something going on there. I haven't looked at it myself yet, but it sounds a little weird when you're describing a two-way mirror simulating superfluids. That was a red flag for me as something that doesn't immediately make any sense to me. But I'm happy to look at the model. But like, is it a fully complete model that explains reality yet, or is it not a finished model? And if it's not finished yet, how is it sufficient to have changed your mind back to the flat Earth?
Okay, yeah. So I'll try to clarify. I think I should be able to do that here. So he does have a model, and the intent of his model, I think he's shown other things on it, but the intent from his demonstrations are to try to show a 24-hour sun in Antarctica. That was the intent of the observations that he demonstrated, and he was able to, in his model, show the 24-hour sun. So it is complete, and it did achieve what he was going for. If I may clarify, my referencing to like people calling it crude and critiquing it is more to do with people like in the comment section saying it's not accurate or enough. But and then what also they're doing, because he did set out to show the apparent sun and he showed it. So that I want to clarify that. So empirically, I think that is sound demonstration of the observation. And then and I'll get to
before we move on from that.
Yeah.
Did it accurately replicate the day and night for the rest of the world, or it was just he somehow managed to make it stay bright in around the edge of the flat Earth on Antarctica the whole time? And like, I don't know, I really do want to look at this afterwards because I'm very curious about how he was able to replicate like a 24-hour sun that goes over your head in a circle when you're standing on the edge. And then what he also needs to replicate is
it seems so counterintuitive.
He also needs to replicate the day and night for the northern hemisphere at the same time in his model. And that I would be very dubious of, that his model has a 24-hour sun and has the accurate sunset times for the rest of the world. And you were already hinting at some of the comments saying that his results were not accurate. So
why I think that they were saying that is because once he showed, because my thought is that the final experiment was trying to be promoted as the final be all of the conversation, that this cosmology can be settled. We know it's a globe. The flat Earth is dunked on and can't do anything about it. And so that was the intent. But now there's someone who presents a model where it's a flat model with a dome, and he shows an apparent 24-hour sun. So now, because that just would take back the exclusivity that the globe had, that's where I think these people who are very maybe adamant or globers or even anti-flat earthers, they will go into the comment section and they will say to him, well, you have to also be able to explain this, and this. And his model, like my understanding of it, I haven't talked to him yet, and I'm hoping to be able to. Maybe I could ask if you would like to come on to a talk with a couple people. We'll see. We'll talk about that. But it's a really cool looking model. But So he did show that observation. And to me, when I saw like in the comments, these people, they were saying, well, you have to also show the 24 hours, the star trails or something like that. his model is trying to, just for right now, just show a sun that it can work, because we need to know if we still can work with a flat Earth model or not. If there's no way of showing an apparent 24-hour sun in Antarctica, then the flat Earth is a model that doesn't work with reality. And I completely agree. If the flat Earth side is going to agree that the North Hemisphere or the inner circle are roughly similar, we have to agree that means the globe model claims that a circling sun in the northern tropic would show convergence, smaller and smaller concentric circles to the tropic, get wider to the equator. We have to accept that if we're going to let them say that for the northern hemisphere, the southern hemisphere would be able to claim the same thing. Concentric circles getting smaller and smaller towards the southern tropic, and then circling around a southern pole if there's just the one circling event. But my understanding of Joe's model as well is that depending on where you're standing on this outer perimeter, you have its personal circling suns, but everyone would see. And my thought of how I've been trying to
Nathan, personal.
Don't let that sound like get crazy or nothing. But I think I could draw it out if you would like.
Look, okay, this is my thing, right? Is that try to think about try to think about your thought process from an outside perspective here, right? Because like we said, like we touched about, you have a lot riding on the shape of the Earth, right? Like from your entire worldview, basically, and your self-identity as a Christian, a Bible believer, like a lot of things are riding on the shape of the Earth. And like you said, you would prefer God to be real, the Bible to be accurate. Like you do have a preference. And so like,
yeah, I think it's better for humanity.
Yeah. So you have a definitive preference here. Like, and it looks like a little bit of a motivational reasoning, because you have a strong motive to reject flat Earth because you prefer that worldview. You think it's better for you, humanity, your soul, everything. Before you hop in, and then now it looks like you are you desperately wanted an explanation for the final experiments observations in a flat Earth model. Like this is something that you were seeking out, that you really wanted. You spent about a week and a half like looking at the more naturalistic model, considering it, and then it sounds like you became really attracted to the idea that there could be a potential explanation in the flat Earth model. This was obviously an attractive idea if you would prefer that model to be true. So it sounds like you kind of briefly, you were looking into the globe model, and then you started looking into this experiment with this guy. And even though you've acknowledged that he cannot explain, like he's claiming to explain one aspect of this observation, but there's tons and tons of other aspects of the world that the model, you said it's not complete yet. It can't explain everything. Most flat earthers say that they don't have a model, but like, I don't know why the globe model seems so much better at explaining not just the 24-hour sun, but the star trails, the concentric circles you're going over. Like, to me, when I compare these two models, it's not even close in terms of explanatory power, successful predictions. So like, it really sounds like there's something motivating your reasoning to want to go back to the flat earth and to cling to any explanation that could somehow preserve that belief in your mind. It's like, from an outside perspective, do you see how this might look like motivational reasoning, where you're not being objective or unbiased?
Yep, 100%. I'm going to disagree, and the reason why is because my thought was there is no demonstration, let alone explanation, for a 24-hour sun. So I did, in all fairness, I gave the observation to the globe. I for a point would have said, I know I'm living on a globe, and that the Bible to me is not true. That was where I was at.
1 week.
For yes, in thinking as I was, because I wasn't immediate when I first saw Joe's model. I wasn't immediately. I was thinking about, like, does this model always recreate a circling sun no matter where you're standing? Because you need to be able to have an apparent sun on the edge, but keep a setting sun on the interior. Yep. And so I haven't seen those things. I've seen he can show 24-hour southern star counter concentric circles to the north with this model. And I think there is something too that, to real quickly, just to throw this in there, like some speculation about what the flat earth is, that up above us, there's like a sort of superfluid, maybe before like the firmament dome, or it would be up there, and it would allow for craft to get sent up there and then float in there and things like that. So that's why
why do you believe any of that, Nathan? Like, that's not in the Bible. There's nothing about superfluidity in the Bible. There's no observations to my understanding. I mean, maybe you say that there's maybe empirical evidence of superfluid above the firmament. I don't know any evidence.
Because if the firmament would prevent things from getting out, but I don't know entirely what's up there. But if like what could be like the enterings into of outer space might be a superfluid. I haven't really seen much about what like very high altitude samplings of the environment up there. But if it's really cold up there, it could allow for quantum levitation and locking and things like that.
But it wouldn't though. It would not.
And there's the mirroring effect as well. Like there is a crystalline structure is described for the firmament, but the whole point is that the dome model can show an apparent 24-hour sun. And so that if I am making a claim that says that that the flat Earth model cannot explain a 24-hour sun or demonstrate it, like I think if you can't explain, you're probably not going to be able to demonstrate. You might be able to try to work on a demonstration and then figure out an explanation from there if you can get it. But typically it's like you try to explain first, think of a hypothesis, and then experimentalize it and try to get a result. But I thought there was no explanation, but then he did.
What was the guy's name again? What was his guy's name?
Joe Hanvey.
Joe Hanvey. Okay, so I want to because one of the things that I liked about our previous conversation is that you had given me something specific, like this observation would cause me to reconsider. So,
and it did.
Because you say that you want to look more to Joe Hanvey's model, you want to talk to Joe Hanvey, you want to see the model yourself. I would like to ask you, what is it that if this model cannot explain, then you would reject that model as a possible explainer for reality? Like if maybe the model cannot explain the sun in the northern hemisphere, or if maybe the model can only gets a sun circling
suns all over the place.
Yeah. So what is that if you looked into this model, this Joe Hanvey's model that he's come up with, what is it that if this model could not do X, then you would reject that model? Is there something that would
So that is part of what I've been trying to think about, and that's part of what I've been initially thinking was well, if this is just an effect of a two-way mirror and the glass dome and it causes a 24-hour sun no matter where you're at, that would not work for a model. But that's where I've been trying to rationalize about how much I'm willing to give to the model, because my thought is if someone is setting up a model to try to show one phenomenon, I'm not necessarily going to be able to ask for several other phenomenon right away, especially if he's working on this one, trying to,
But you should be able to.
You should. Well, I mean, but you can ask for a globe model with geodynamo or the demonstration of molecules. Gravity doesn't affect air molecules, but you have an extreme translation of motion with our atmosphere. So there are certain things I think that could be. So with his model, my thought is, okay, say I made this claim. Say I said I have a laser beam here, and laser beams only go straight.
You do have a laser beam there.
I do. This is no hypothetical laser beam. Okay, so say I say it can only go straight. And then you say, no, you could shine that laser beam to me if I went around the corner.
Yeah.
And then I would say, no, it only goes straight. And then you say, well, watch this. And you take a mirror and you put it at an angle, and then you go stand behind the corner. And then I shine the light at you, and then you see the light go around the corner, which you're around, and you see it go by you. Now, my thought is maybe the light is not quite shining at you. Like if you had said, I can go behind this corner and you can shine the light at me, and it might be not be shining at you, but it's shining near you. So it did go around the corner, which is something where, I was skeptical over, light can only go, the beam can only go straight. So maybe just as okay, well, we have to turn the mirror a little more, and then we would get the light to hit you. And so that would be, maybe that's, I think, where his model is at right now is that, he's kind of tweaking the mirror on the corner. But to me, I think it's fair to give him the concept. The concept was, can a flat model show somehow apparent real? However, can it even show the concept to show it's possible, a 24-hour sun? And he has done so. So I think I think it's fair.
Can you really claim that he's done so? I mean, obviously, I can't claim that because I haven't seen Hanvey's model yet. But the way that you couch this model with so many little disclaimers about how it's not in progress yet. Some people say it's not great.
May I hop in real quick?
And you said that he did explain
with all the couching, with all the couching and everything. I was trying to go through the couching with the understanding from the globe side, because anti-flat earthers will really jump on you. So I'm trying to express, I get from the other side, from a globe side, I get his crudeness of his model, how it's in development, and how these things can be leveraged against the claim of the validity of his model. I understand that, which is why I was trying to preface, like, I've heard what people are saying, and but you can, and yeah.
How long do you think that it will take to test this model? Because again, like,
he's shown it already.
Okay, see, this is what,
however crude or wherever he's at.
No, wait. Let me pause right here. Because when I say test this model, right, I mean test it against our observations of reality, right? Not just against one observation. Like, I'm not saying test this model as in can you replicate a 24-hour sun in Antarctica with this model. I mean test this model, because when we come up with a scientific model and it can explain one thing really well, then the next step is, well, are there any empirical observations that contradict this model and show that it's wrong? So, like, if in order for a model to be held up in the long term, it has to go through multiple different tests of multiple different observations. So even if I take everything you're saying as a given and Hanvey's model, it can perfectly explain the 24-hour sun observation. If I just accept that, but then I ask you, like, well, what's the next step to test this model? What's the next observation that this model needs to explain, or else we reject it? If we go and we look in North America and this model cannot explain why there's nighttime in North America, then the model has to be rejected, right? You would have to admit, like, well, the model might be able to explain 24-hour sun, but it can't explain reality, so we reject it, right?
Yeah, if that conflict is there, where it's continuous time after time, we are unable to get things that are close or close enough to reality, yeah, the model would be rejected. Maybe we'll start with here. From where I'm saying, if we're just talking in a vacuum here, we're talking one topic. Let's talk about the sun real quick. If you were someone who had said that there was a circling sun, and then they went to find went to Antarctica, and then they saw it set, and then you had made a model that could show how you could have a setting sun on a globe, wouldn't that be able to say, okay, well, now it's not as exclusifying as we thought it was, because there is at least it's at least possible on a globe model to show a setting sun. That's how, in a vacuum, just looking at the one event, that's how I look at that.
But see, we don't live in a vacuum, Nathan. If that happened, and the sun set in Antarctica against the globe prediction, and then people came up and said, oh, well, here's how that could be.
That could adapt, right?
The very first thing that I would do is say, what does that mess up? Because if you were going to try to tweak your model to, like, make a sun set in Antarctica at this time of year, you're going to have to lose some accuracy with the rest of the model, because, the model can be accurate at predicting sunsets at, like, everywhere on Earth. So if you're all of a sudden have the sun setting in Antarctica, like, somewhere else on Earth is going to be not accurate to reality because you've changed your model and messed it up. So, like, I think it would be easily dismissed if the globe model tried to change in that way, because all you would have to do is then look at other observations that it's no longer capable of explaining. And, like, that's how science is done. I think that's the normal, reasonable thing to do with Hanvey's model. And it sounds like at this stage, maybe it's too early for you to rule it out. You want to see how this develops, but, like, there's got to be some kind of timeline for you. Some kind of, well, if the model fails this or this or this, then I might not want to reject it, but I have to reject it.
Because I don't know what is necessarily possible, what could be reproduced, or what variable he could add to the model where suddenly something works. And then, then you would have to check back, okay, if we add this variable, does it throw off our previous observations that the model is able to substantiate? So I agree with that. But I do think that, so this is where I might, and flat earth spirituality is a thing, so supernatural can be invoked. And if I think this is very logical, and I think this is a very fair thing to say. Someone who's at CERN, I don't have the same technological engineering skills to recreate what they are doing, what machine they are making there. And so I would say if the Earth has a dome and everything, the creator would be so intelligent, and not only intelligent and know supernatural laws and natural laws, but also have the exact engineering techniques and abilities to be able to give us certain light patterns. Those things, Joe, I think with the model, he's on the right track. And I think that's a really, I didn't even think an observation could be made where a sun would show like that. People have tried it with glass domes and everything. And there hasn't been even an apparent 24-hour sun. So I think that's kudos to Joe and for the flat earth model to be even say, we can get an apparent. And so to me, that takes away the exclusive claim, which I was willing to grant. And I think that now, and I still think it's good. I think if we part of science is, we want to really be thorough. If we're going to root out a worldview that's competing with another, let's make sure we test things, look at things. I mean, if I'm going to say about Joe Hamby's model, I want to give it such a time limit. Like there will be what time will show him what he can achieve, I think is one thing. But I think like for a lot of flat earthers, like 24-hour sun, I think there's good reason to be skeptical why people were about the circling sun. There were videos and everything, yeah, but there were some that had a sun disappear behind a skinny pole or a clear jar, or have duplicate clouds or snow or different sun rays. But sure, there was video, and then you had South Pole cams that would miss 8 hours that were supposed to be the daytime, but they said it was too dark and everything. So there's some odd things. But if they're gonna go and show and report that there's a sun, okay. Flat Earth for so long, there's no sun, so Flat Earth can't explain a sun. And that is where I was. But then that's fair for a model to say, hey, let's real quick see if we can try to show that a sun is possible. And that was what happened. And so I think because the Flat Earth can explain.
You're just accepting that that's what happened, though.
Well, he did. He showed it. He showed a 24-hour sun.
Do you really think that that's what happened?
He had a model for a little while, I think.
Like my issue with this, right, is when you create a model to specifically only explain one observation while ignoring all the other observations that your model must necessarily explain, right? Like you cannot have a model that does not explain all the observations, no. Right? Like if you have one observation, model, it's out.
If your model was saying that there wasn't even a way for a 24-hour sun to work, and then suddenly you do something and you're able to get at least the plausibility or the possibility of a 24-hour sun, and then you're just trying to determine how plausible, I think it's fair that, especially because it's early on in the model development and everything, I think that it's fair to let him kind of focus on what variables he's trying to work on now. And I don't, to ask him to show the exact Terminator line of where we get into absolute nighttime versus like Admiral Twilight or something, like I can press him on some more specific details a little later, but my main focus right now is how does the sun model work? What happens to the sun? Can it actually show an apparent sun?
Nathan,
and that's what it looks like.
I'm going to illustrate this to you. Like this is how I'm thinking about this, right? Like if I had a model that the sun is a flashlight that's held up by a giant, right? And I explain all my observations with that. Okay, the giant is in South Antarctica, moving it around. The giant is lowering it down, and then I say, look, my model explains all the observations for everything that happens with the sun. And then you say, well, why is it that when we look outside, we don't see your giant? And I say, well, look. I only wanted a model to explain the sun. Okay, I mean, sure, when we look outside, we don't see the giant, but the purpose of my model is not to explain everything. I only want to explain about the sun. So my model works to explain the sun, but my model doesn't work in reality because we can look out and see there's not a giant there. So the analogy I'm drawing here is that Hanvy's model, even if I take it for granted that it can explain the movements of the sun, there are other things that contradict our empirical observations, just like our empirical observations of there's not a giant sun or not a giant holding up the sun. Like there are other ways that we should test this model for other things that are necessary about this model that don't hold true to reality. And that's why we reject it. Not because, oh, well, now we can come up with a random model to explain our observations that can't explain anything else. Like that's not valid.
So, yeah. So I do think, and I will give Joe some time, and like I want to talk with him and everything, and maybe hopefully can see his demonstration. I've thought about maybe trying to build something as well. But I would like to
people who are familiar with Hanvy's model in the comments, and I'm not. So this could not be accurate. I don't know. I promise I will look into Hanvy's model after this because thanks for bringing this to my attention. But Victoria seems to know a little bit about Hanvy's model and said that the model shows reflected points of light, and you see two suns in his model. So if that is correct, then if his model has two suns, okay. So at least like I'm not taking crazy pills anymore. At least
no. I'm there. I'm right now because the claim was that even in the name of the observation itself, they were dubbing it final. So it's like this was something that was supposed to be exclusive. And so then to have someone bring it back because they can at least show possibility, I think that is important and noteworthy, because it would be one thing if there was no if no model was showing a 24-hour sun, flat earthers couldn't do anything. But that model right now, by showing it, has kept a lot of people thinking that there could be something optical, the certain way that light bends through mediums, if there's different layers of firmament glass, like dome. I don't know. I don't know the sky. But that would be, I don't know the sky, but then and that's where, as long as you can show it's possible, people would bring it back to the ground and say, well, the earth doesn't move and that we see very far.
So Nathan, here's my hope, right? I genuinely hope that you investigate Hanvey's model with an open mind, trying to be unbiased, trying to think about, does this model actually explain the reality that we live in? And I think that you're capable of that. I think that you're perfectly capable of looking at this rationally and coming to a rational conclusion. So, I'm going to, that'll take time. Hanvey's model will have to be explored, and you'll have to, ask him your clarifying questions and see if it can explain. So I think what I would like to do, you mentioned about the finality about the final experiment. So I actually would like to announce for my channel, I told you a little bit about it, but I've been planning now. One of my goals for 2025 is that I would like to do a final experiment. And I would like to get your thoughts on this. Maybe I can have you back on the show after my final experiment, which of course is a little bit cheeky of a name, but here's my idea, right? Because I often hear flat earthers will say observations in the sky are independent of the shape of the earth, right? So, or they'll say it's vague.
But to note, the globe does explain the sky incredibly accurately.
Okay, well, I'm glad we're on the same page about that, but I oftentimes hear, we want a measurement of curve, and that's what is the big ask. And I often hear about how level is the same thing as flat, is the same thing as straight, horizontal. These are all synonyms. So my idea for a final experiment is to go back to LIGO, the Laser Interferometry Gravitational Observatory, I think, and they have a 4-kilometer perfectly straight concrete tube. It has to be perfectly straight because you're sending a laser through a vacuum. So there's no refraction, there's no funny business, it's going straight. And I've been in the control room at LIGO when the laser's running, and you can see it on camera hitting in a straight line. You can see it going straight. So we know that it's a perfectly straight concrete tube. It has to be from the engineering. Now, my proposal for the final experiment, my independent variable will be distance along this 4-kilometer arm. I would like to measure the level every half a kilometer. So if the world is flat, if the earth is flat, it doesn't need to be perfectly level, right? It could be tilted as long as it's straight, but every single point should have the same level along this straight line, right? Because it's straight. The only way for it to have different level is if the earth is curved, because level means that you're perpendicular to the direction of gravity, right? So
yes.
It's a tangent line to the curve of the earth. So because normally we don't have to have any engineering projects that are so perfectly straight. Normally bridges and things they can curve. It's not a big deal. They don't need to be perfectly straight. But this LIGO actually, for it to work, needed it to be perfectly straight. So it could not be level over such a distance. Over 4 kilometers, it's no longer going to be perpendicular to the direction of gravity across that entire curve of the earth. So if the earth is curved, as I measure the level with distance down this long arm of LIGO, the level should change, and every single point should have a different level, but it should be perfectly straight and flat. And so this observation, if I can get these data points for how this level changes, I can use that data to back calculate the curvature of the earth.
I like the concept, and I think that I think a lot of flirters would say, like, yeah, test the ground and measure those things out for curvature. I would just be curious, like, what would you be using, like, for as far as what data set you would be using, like WGS84 or GPS, or would you how would you go about, like, elevation and?
Yeah, so basically, my plan is to get a little RC car and get permission to put a little level on it, a little laser level, and just drive it along this little tube and just measure how the level changes along the way with distance, because the distance markers are marked on the tube. There's a marker for your distance along the tube. So you drive the RC car down to 0.5 kilometers. That's your independent variable. Then your dependent variable is the level. So as you change the distance, which goes from 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5, all the way to 4 kilometers, then the level is your dependent variable that changes. That's the experiment, and you can.
Are you going to calibrate the level like at T0, and then see if like the bubble or whatever, if you're using like a laser or something, you'll watch to see how it starts to taper off level?
Yes. So there will be a graph of distance x from 0 to 4 kilometers, and then level, and based on how level changes with distance, you can calculate what is the radius of the Earth. So if I do this, if I measure that level changes with distance across a straight surface, and you can use that data to calculate the purported radius of the Earth, I want to know, would you still be a flat earther even after that? Because this, like, I don't know how a flat Earth model. I mean, maybe Han V can come up with a model that could somehow explain that, but I do not know how that could work. I mean, all the time.
Yeah, that would be very, very compelling, and it would be to see like the data and the elevation angles and where the data was drawn from for like what references you're using and everything. I think that's a good experiment, and I think that is, plus it's a reason to drive an RC car on top of LIGO. So anyway, so I think that would be good and be good empirical data, and I think it's worth gathering because because I know I've said some things that make it sound like I have some bias and everything. I do.
No,
I don't. Who, me? No. So I said that kind of more like casually as like, yeah, I have a bias. I'm willing to admit it that I have a preference. I think it is better for humanity if we have very high likelihood of eternal salvation, paradise with all of our loved ones. That to me is a much better outcome than if we, after our energy in our brain ceases to exist, we go black for existence. But
I can agree with you that that's a better outcome.
Yeah, but whatever reality is, I'm not going to. If reality really is naturalism and the Bible's falsified, I don't want to live in delusion. There are real problems on this earth, and being as based in reality, even if the Bible was wrong, the creator that I worship would want me to be based in reality, to being as objective as possible to try to figure out solutions for these the things that our society deals with. We can have a very good world very easily and very quickly, even because we can get so coordinated and organized, and we have so much development and intelligence and infrastructure and materials. We could do a lot with this world if we chose to. And I think there are some people that want to withhold. I don't want to think
Nathan, we agree about all that. I agree with what you were just saying there. I mean, sure, I might prefer an afterlife to be true, but I agree with you. Like, ultimately, my preference is not what determines what's true. Reality is what is true. So we have to, it doesn't matter what I prefer. It's reality that's
yes.
the thing. So
and that's why, like, I'm willing. That's why, like, when the observation was first reported, and I've never even thought a demonstration of a circling sun would be possible on a flat Earth. I was completely okay with saying yes, the Earth is a globe. Empirically, that's what it is. And I took astronomy in high school. I got a really high A in the class. Like, I used to love space, outer space, and everything. I had attributed it to a creator, and that it was part of like his grand work and everything. But then with the flat Earth, and then being someone who defends the Bible as a flat Earth book and everything, I had realized like this cosmology of a globe, and that was kind of weird for a while. Like on the globe, like things felt very isolated. There were some feelings that my personality, I think, like I'm very happy a lot of the time. Sadness, not in like a thinking about things in society that cause problems, can make me down. Like individuals don't and things, but institutions and situations.
But you acknowledge that your emotions are not a guide for truth.
No, so that's why the observation converted me to the globe and not my emotions.
The report
of the 2-hour sun was what. But that was then to go back to the flat Earth, because I had seen a demonstration that shows there's something there. Now, if the demonstration shows to not hold enough water and is not fully able to accommodate the observation, Of course, I will immediately go back to a globe, probably even stronger this time because I would be more certain that the efforts of a flat Earth and trying to make it work would not be so. So if I'm in a phase where I'm back and forth here or there, like I'm kind of okay with that because either way, I'm gonna have to. If the Earth is flat, I'm gonna have to know about the flat Earth model to be able to talk about it, and I'm gonna have to know about the globe model to try to be able to poke holes in things that don't really make sense or anything like that. And that carries along my information about and my knowledge of the other worldview.
Okay.
So
I agree with what you're saying here. And I support you in this endeavor. Like I think that and forgive me for giving you homework here, but I do think like I 100% support you going in, investigating Hanvi's model. Like,
I'd hope anyone would investigate something. Like, if something's reported, look into it and see what it is and what does it mean. And I think be fair to both models. If someone puts forward something that helps a flat Earth, okay, have a more stronger opposition side because that's better for you. If you can refute it, you're refuting something that's more and more capable of explaining that, which should further bolster and solidify that worldview. I think we should be, because it's important. I think it's a win. It can be a win-win either way, but I think it does determine, how we go about getting this world more for the people, we the people. Like that would be. So I think we got to know.
What I see is,
why doesn't NASA help our farmers grow food and just put cartoons out of space? That would be. It's anyway.
Because they're not the National Agricultural Administration. Like
we can give them the rain-making technology and say, here, farmers, every Tuesday and Friday you get rain. That would be.
Sure. If NASA can control the weather and make it rain for the farmers, that would be very nice. I'd prefer that too. But Nathan, I do think that you are approaching this with the correct approach. If you're not a little bit of bias, that maybe a little bit of motivated reasoning there, I think that I really just encourage you to, like, seriously, I mean, you have so much writing on this. It sounds like it's really important to investigate Hanvi's model. It sounds like so much is writing right now on the veracity of Hanvi's model that I'm going to be looking into it after this. Maybe I might make a video about it.
I bet Joe. I think he'd welcome you to critique his model, Grayson. I think that would be.
And I want you to critique his model too, and try to I think you should go at it trying to disprove it. And if you can't, then come back
on to the model.
Yeah,
so I will say, I think everybody has bias, but I do believe that once you go into like a scientific experiment, or you're looking for data and you're looking at a direct observation of something, whether it's a natural observation or experimental observation, that's where I'm willing to admit my bias casually. But when I look into data or I remove my bias. I'm self-aware, and I can, that's why I was able to, despite my deep, belief and faith prior to going to Antarctica, I was willing to say, yeah, the Earth is a globe. Based on this observation, because Flat Earth had absolutely no way of doing anything about the observation until, Hanvi, I think, had been working on it a little beforehand. I'm not quite sure the timetable, but
I don't know if we're going to get any more progress until I've looked and studied Hanvi's.
Yeah, you should check it out, and we could maybe, if you want to wrap up or something. I don't know if people have questions or anything. I was kind of going to ask if I could share something on your channel about
it obviously depends on what you want to share, but
yeah. So it has to do with heart disease. I was actually watching your chat about abiogenesis, and that actually right now is because my nutritional cardiology degree was supposed to be about evolution and how we chronologically developed over time from start to modern to be plant eaters. That is why plant eating is able to reverse heart disease. It's the only way we know of in our medical data to do so. No other nutrition, no other paleo, keto, Mediterranean, no pharmaceutical, no surgical. And I was actually going to ask if I could share the angiogram just to show for information awareness.
Sure, if you want, but I might couch it with a healthy dose of skepticism because.
That's fine.
Okay.
I
haven't seen what you're about to show, so.
Yeah, Grayson has no, whatever happens here is on me and not.
But I'm gonna be reacting skeptically to it. So just
that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
That's good science. So that is a picture on the this A side here. My finger's on that side. So this side here, that's the before, that's the after. So narrow arteries, this is actually late stage heart disease. Number one cause of death in our country for over 100 years. Narrow arteries cause high blood pressure, and if something blocks that opening, it's a heart attack or stroke in the brain. 32 months later, a little under 3 years, they had systemic widening, only shown possible with vegan or plant-based eating. So hopefully no one does, but anyone, if you know anyone, chest pain, high blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, many people 50, 60, 70 years young have been able to go from late stages, reliance on hospitals, chest pain, to getting a much better quality of life, having years, sometimes decades more time with their loved ones. So hopefully no one knows that, but that stuff works really fast. Like cholesterol, blood pressure can drop rapidly. So if your medications, I can't give advice, but if you're on medications or anything and consider the options, talk to your doctor. You should monitor because it works so rapidly for people, but hopefully no one knows that. But that is actually right now, I'm trying to get that information into the medical curriculum because cardiologists right now are taught about prevention of heart disease, which is good for someone who's healthy, but for someone who has heart disease, prevention doesn't work. They need to get better. They need reversal. And so reversal, there's a little bit.
Nathan, are you I mean, if you're just advocating for a plant-based diet to improve cardiovascular outcomes, like that's not, there's plenty of scientific studies showing that, a more vegetables or more plant-based diet can have positive cardiovascular outcomes. That's not controversial. That's not something that they are like trying to keep out of the field. Like I could find tons of research about that.
You could, but what it is like that angiogram shows reversal. And so someone who had the disease, if they tried like.
Oh, wait. Where did you get this angiogram? You have one angiogram, right?
You can like Google plant-based angiogram and see, a bunch of different angiograms of reversal because it's been...
Okay, wait, hold on. Okay, but you're not pulling this from a study. This is just like an individual's angiogram because it's going to be a lot less compelling to have an effect size, statistical power, like.
Yeah. So,
medical health outcomes are so varied on an individual basis that showing one person's outcome is not going to convince me of anything because I used to work in the healthcare industry. I've seen hundreds of surgeries. I know people's anatomy and biology can be so different and mysterious about why something works for someone and doesn't work for somebody else. So unless you have a study with a proper statistical effect size and power, I really don't think that you're not going to be able to get anything changed in any textbooks with one individual's angiogram.
No, it's multiple. I think that one is the most profound. But that angiogram, so that comes from Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, and he had a trial where he had, I think it was 199 patients that went with his plant protocol, and they were kind of late stage heart disease patients, and out of those 199, there was one person who had a minor event, whereas for the control group, I think they had 60% major events or adverse cardiac events. And so it's actually been, it's repeatable. It's been done before. No other.
Why is it, if I look this up, because, obviously this is new information to me. I'm not familiar with.
So this is a lot to just kind of
when I look it up, you're describing his data as reliable and repeatable, but when I look it up, I'm seeing people from the Cleveland Clinic saying that it's unproven. The data is not rigorous. The clinical trials do not support his conclusions. The evidence is skimpy. Why am I don't know, man. It doesn't sound like it's as rigorous as you're portraying it to be here.
There is opposition, and this might be potentially, this is speculation, but bias, because there are people who, for one reason or another, prefer to eat animal or something like that, or don't want things to necessarily change.
This is falling back into
the angiogram is only been accomplished one way, and several other ailments too. People have reversed, there are practicing doctors.
You're making a lot of claims here, Nathan, that I'm sorry, I don't think that you have the authority to make these claims, because I know that maybe you've seen this guy's work, you've seen these angiograms, but you're making claims about the state of the medical literature, which I don't think you have the authority to make claims about.
Well, they do not.
How steeped are you in the medical literature? I mean, how steeped really are you in keeping up with the current cardiovascular diet literature out there?
So the most recent thing that I was told from the university, the U of M, is that they teach prevention. So to teach prevention of heart disease is good to teach, but there is a difference between prevention and reversal. And my awareness and what I've not only looked for, but also heard from other from doctors is that they do not teach reversal of ailment in school of heart disease, only prevention. And so that would mean that when someone goes to the doctor who has chest pain, the doctor is going to tell them, well, we can't use prevention on this person. We can only give them something that might slow the progress or try to alleviate the pain, but it's not actually going to try to work at getting their arteries back to being circulating and functioning. And that's where this reversal information, even if they try eating plants and it doesn't work, that might be one thing, but plants are the only way that have ever even accomplished reversal. No way of eating animal, no pill, injunction with exercise or anything like that has ever gotten reversal. And so that's where it's about making the awareness, the information there so that doctors can tell patients, hey, you can try plants, you can try surgery, and hopefully whatever they choose works.
I just looked it up and I found a study of reversal of coronary heart disease through intensive lifestyle changes from 1998. So this is reversal that you said had never been done.
Other than with plants.
Aerobic exercise, stress management training, smoking cessation, group psychosocial support for 5 years reversed coronary heart disease. So, like, I'm sorry, but, like, I don't think that you are well-read enough in this literature. Like, I know that you have read this one guy's work, and I know that it's a very compelling story that this guy has done, but, like, are you reading other people's work in the field, or are you just reading this one guy's work and not reading, like, because, like, to understand, to make authoritative claims about no one has ever shown this before means that you should have read everything relevant to be able to make.
Yeah, I should say to my awareness, I've never seen, and that's what, like, I'll have to, if you could send me that link, I will look into it, because that's my understanding, and I've tried looking for other ways of reversal, and plant eating is the only way. And actually, I want to real quick jump back to, thank you, Grayson. Let's see, I did want to say, like, another thing with the final experiment and that trip to Antarctica and everything. Thank you for letting me share that information, by the way, just, for what it is and the discussion too. I greatly appreciate. But with the final experiment, here's one thing I've tried looking into, because there are, different things data you could try to look for and everything to try to show one side or the other. And if you know of any, or could find any, or if anyone, that knows has information, I tried a while back, and I tried on a couple different occasions, trying to look for trade between, like, Australia and South America, where they go to the South Pole. How, like, there's the geographic, ceremonial, and magnetic South Pole. And I would try to find where they go to the same pole and travel, say, 5,000 miles max, because that would be, to me, physical land gapping that on flat Earth there is no way.
Why would they do that? Why would anybody that wants to trade between nations choose to trade in the middle of an ice continent?
Well, if they're at the pole and they're there with, if they're at the South Pole,
you don't just accidentally have to be at the pole and think, hey, while I'm here, let me trade.
Yeah, like, hey, let me get a coin from you, South America. And
that's not how that works, bro.
So, that to me is something that, or, like, okay, so one of the things, like, about Antarctica that's been said is, like, you can't fly across it, and they don't make certain routes because it's dangerous for the plane, which is fair. I'm all for it. If something's going to endanger people, we shouldn't do it. But if we're able to fly, like, from continent to pole, South Pole, any of the continents can get to the South Pole, that to me would mean that if you can fly one way to the pole, why wouldn't you be able to then keep going and get to that other continent that you're coming from the other way?
The difficult, and that has been done. It was recently done. I think it was called if anybody in the chat remembers, they did a documentary about it. They live streamed the flight. Huh?
One More Orbit?
That doesn't sound correct to me, but, like, they literally were live streaming in the airplane as they flew around.
That's One More Orbit.
The reason why that the flat Earth community generally doesn't like it is because they didn't go in a straight line. They got there and then they changed directions, because if they continued going in a straight line, there would have been no place for them to land, and they would have run out of fuel and died.
Because they would have gone to the firmament. That's why they say they banked, is because they on a flat Earth, you wouldn't be able to go straight. So to go to the one more orbit route, they and people mapped it on a flat Earth. Like it works on a flat Earth, the route they took, which is a bummer because if you have all that manpower dedicated to trying to do that, you could easily settle it right there. Like they have astronauts on there and
here's what you would need to do. Here's what you need to do for that, Nathan. You would need a couple millions of dollars to establish a refueling airport on the far side of Antarctica so that they could fly in a straight line without having to change course, because currently there is nowhere for them to refuel. Or potentially you could also
refuel when they bank.
Also spend that millions of dollars on a mid-air refuel. And either way, this would require millions and millions of dollars to be practically feasible, because logistically, you're in the middle of a giant ice continent without an airport. There's no fuel.
It's so I don't have millions of dollars, but like if it's military, if it's astronauts, if it's Royal Society, and these people, they probably got a buck or two. And like if they're gonna turn and fly to the other, if they're gonna go to the center of Antarctica and then pick a radius to fly out, why would they bank and take that radius, not just go straight and take that radius and get to the?
Because there's no.
I think they refueled in I think they refueled in Africa.
Look at a map and try to find a straight line between two cities that goes through a straight line through Antarctica. Look at how many miles are between those cities, and look if you could conceivably do that flight without refueling. You can't.
Well, I could maybe see it if they had to refuel, if they refueled in Antarctica and then when they banked, they turned towards the direction of that fueling station. I could see that as an explanation for them to say we had to bank because we had to go refuel. That also would be very convenient because it's now no longer able to falsify the flat Earth. But if they're going to say they have to bank, they have to bank. And so, maybe that is the situation. But that opportunity, and here, like with the flat Earth and everything, a video from launch to space or something like that. Like I feel like there's been a lot of if Earth is a globe, which is part of what I was thinking about.
Elon did that. SpaceX did a video from launch to space.
They got some funky videos of like showing them.
Okay, we're going in circles, Nathan. We're moving so many goalposts. I want to say
it's not, the sky's a mystery. That's been that since day one. The sky's been a mystery. That goalpost has remained. But I'm willing to let the sky falsify the flat Earth. Like I think that's some flirters will probably jump on me and say like the sky. And I've used it in debate. I've been like the sky can't prove the ground. The sky can't prove the ground. I've been there. That's my position. So I'm willing to like certain things like I think are fine and justifying because I want to know the truth. I think that's what ultimately like a creator I would worship would want me to know the truth so that I can, live life and enjoy it and help others and do the same. And like I think this life is amazing. We're either specially made by the creator and it's a blessing, or we're here by chemical configuration through reactions. And oh my gosh, are we special then? That is statistically fascinating. Either way, this life is
before you go on and say anything that's gonna make me want to continue arguing. I agree. Life is special. Life is amazing. Whether or not you believe it's a supernatural miracle or you think it's all naturalistic, either way, life is pretty great, and we should.
Your life and others' lives are important.
Yes,
that's what it's.
We can end on a point of agreement. We should all just be good people to each other and don't be dicks in the comments. So I think we can all agree on this point. Thank you for coming back on the show for this follow-up, Nathan. I appreciate you. I hope that my community is not too mean to you. I don't know.
I'll be in the comment section, y'all. I'll be checking in and I'll chat with any of you. I want to talk. I like conversation. Freedom of speech. I think we should talk. If people disagree, you should be able to speak it out. It shouldn't be like they disagree. Let's get rid of them or whatever. I never like that. No, don't listen to people who tell you to hurt. Anyway, I'm gonna stop. I'll get off the soapbox here.
Well, like I said, I like debating and arguing to get at some kind of truth about the world, not just tearing each other down. So yeah, let's just, be polite and respectful. But that's one thing I appreciate about you, Nathan, is that you're a chill dude. I think that you're here with good faith. So I always appreciate talking with you. And then for everyone that came by, thanks for being on the stream. I think this is like one of my most watched live streams I've done. So thank you all that were here for this. And thank you for your flexibility. I know that this was supposed to be a couple hours ago, and logistically,
no problem, you've done it for me. Grayson puts on, y'all. He really does try. He does good content, and he's nice man, very cordial. So it's always anytime, dude, for real.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your week and a happy new year. Peace out, y'all.
Peace, everybody. Happy New Year.